Within the earnings reports this year, we've seen that the S&P 500 companies have been talking about tariffs more than they have since the second quarter of 2019. 146 different companies have cited the term tariff or tariffs during their fourth quarter earnings call. What companies are talking about tariffs and potentially being something that could be materially negative for their business? Those companies in the material sectors. 82% of companies in the material sectors are doing that, and 80% of companies in the utility sector have cited tariff or tariffs on their earnings call for Q4 here. Nucor just put out a release actually saying that as a result of the tariffs that are being slapped on steel and aluminum, they need to rework the cost of all their existing contracts for rebar, for steel rebar, if you will, for construction. That letter went out this morning here. So this is, we talk about earnings being good in the rearview mirror, but there's now these new risks that are starting to crop up right now in the short term. I struggle here with, though, and this is something, Tom, perhaps you could speak to. There's a lot of negative news flow, or at least news flow that seems like it would be very disruptive to the markets in the world at which we know them in front of us right now. Yet these risks aren't necessarily materializing in a significantly negative way for a variety of asset prices. So how do you separate the noise from the signal here, the signal from the noise, the wheat from the chaff? How do you know what to ignore and when to pay attention?
There is one of the things that this market's become, the market, it has this learned behavior. So it learns, right? The market's always learning. And the market has learned, how to discount the noise. It depends on who's making the noise. So the market has learned how to, Trump, because it's the nature of who he is, he creates more noise than anybody else ever. That's his thing. He's a noise creator. So the market's learned to discount that. If it was somebody else who was president, the market might not discount the same way. But for Trump, they've learned how to discount the noise. So I think that, from a market perspective, they realize that it's, it just doesn't play that big a role. And I think that's what you're seeing, which to me actually makes the most sense, because the market should discount the noise. Like, we've been discounting the noise forever. Like, literally forever. Like, since the day we started Tasty, there was a whole thing about, no news. I don't care.
Right.
The noise is irrelevant to me. The noise comes from the market. I can tell you, based on how things are trading and how much my screen's blinking, how much whatever role noise plays in the market. And so for me, this is actually what I prefer, which is the market to discount the noise and let the market just do its thing, whatever it's going to do. Because I just think that's the way trading has always made sense to us. I think it's proving, I think the market's actually proving what we've been saying for the last 15 years, which is just ignore the noise and trade what's in front of you.
Yeah, but noise does bring opportunity, and opportunity 100%. Is what we do. Look,
100%. Noise, it's not just noise that brings opportunity. Price brings opportunity. Noise brings opportunity. Anything that makes the screens change colors faster brings opportunity. Whatever pops your vol type of thing. But I think the market has learned to discount certain types of noise. And, the Trump noise is the loudest, and I think it's learned to discount it. Not in a good way or a bad way. It just discounts it.
Yeah, the last few weeks we've had these big gaps, or relatively smaller gaps, I should say. DeepSeek, of course, tariff round one with China, Canada, Mexico. We have the steel aluminum tariffs to kick off this week. The gaps are getting smaller and they're being covered quicker. DeepSeek, that was a 5-day gap coverage. We have the first round of tariffs that's covered in 2 days. Yesterday, or at least at the start of this week, we gap open lower. Within the first hour of futures being open, the market covers back to Friday's close. So maybe there is a bit of a boy who cried wolf phenomenon that's playing out here in real time where, yes, these threats are real. Yes, we know the tariffs are coming, but if it's just noise, then the signal is basically to ignore it right now and not necessarily get worked up about the latest tweet. And I think what you guys are pointing out is something that I've reflected on. How come I'm so much more focused on the news, and why do I care more about this than necessarily you guys? I think about how I learned how to trade. Like, my trading experience comes in 2008, 2009 with social media and financial media. I'm not sitting in a pit, right? The only thing that you guys see when you guys start trading are the numbers on the screens and the emotions of the people around you. You don't have Twitter in your hand, right? Elon Musk isn't sending something out that's moving the market every hour. Neither is Trump, and I'm not getting a notification for it while I'm trading. So maybe it's a function of the fact that you guys are better suited. And people like myself need to learn that skill set of ignoring the noise a little bit more, because quite frankly, the world that we've grown up in and traded in, there's always that bell ringing on our phone that such and such headline is coming out, and we need to react to it. Maybe we don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, which you just said, and it has nothing to do with us growing up in a different generation, because the products haven't changed that much, the strategies haven't changed that much, the technology we all have access to, but it's the way your generation relies on that kind of the dissemination of all that information, because that's how you process things, and we would process things differently. There's no question about that. I think that we always process things from within what I would call market structure, meaning that we always looked at things from inside out, and I think that you looked at things from outside in, and that's the difference. And I'm not talking about just you, Chris Vecchio, but it could be you, an entire generation. Like, I think that my kids, Tony's kids, Nikki, and that whole age group, think of things the same way that you do. You looking outside in, like, I feel like we were part of the machine, and you guys are figuring out that machine. And so I think we look at things differently. Like, here, I'll make it even simpler.
Sure.
We were part of the original group that learned how the sausage was made. And you guys came in and just started eating the sausage. And it's a little different. And, you never got to see how the sausage was made. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, and you and Dylan had a really good conversation last week on Truth or Skepticism about the importance of storytelling, right? And I think my generation in particular, we're more interested in learning what the story is and then working backwards from there. Whereas you guys say, like, well, if the market plumbing is doing X, Y, Z, then we can tell you what the story is, right? I don't need to see the non-farm payroll print to know if it's a good or bad number. The market prices will tell me it, right? And so you're kind of working backwards to the same, well, we're both trying to get to the same solution ultimately. But in this environment, like filtering out the noise, I think this actually poses more of a problem for people like myself, because trying to figure out the story is a lot more difficult, and avoiding all that noise perhaps is the most important thing. So staying within your mechanics, as we and you guys always preach, but staying within your mechanics and having a system is really important here. And I found my way, at least as a macro person who tries to trade those stories, the longer duration stuff is absolutely your friend here. I find myself going out beyond 45 days right now. It's more buy and hold than day in, day out trading, but it's the way that I am able to avoid the noise, if you will, avoid the noid, like it's an old Domino's commercial, and keep my head on a swivel.
Yeah, we definitely look at things very different than that, but I get it. I get it.
People need to know there's more than way to skin a cat here in this market, and you don't need to be overwhelmed. But you should perhaps think about adapting if you're struggling in the first 22 days here since Trump took office.
I do like the discussion I had with Dylan on bark versus bite, on which is that's what we called it, and but I do think that if you guys had seen how these, if you'd seen the industry from the inside out, you would be the same as us. Like that's the whole thing. Like, I think if you had seen, how markets are made and how order flow works from the inside out, you would think the same way we think. That's why it was so hard for us.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to become a strategy expert than it is to become an AI expert this week. DeepSeek expert the week prior, tariff expert now. I mean, it makes it a lot easier to just say, this is the noise. What strategy can I apply for the noise to benefit my directional assumption? And that's where we come from.
One of the
really different.
The funny thing is, Chris, on all the software that we've built from Thinkorswim all the way through Tasty, one of the reasons that we never focused on having news in the platforms, and we never focused on having charts in the platforms, and we never focused on all the things that everybody traditionally uses, is because we only focus on how the actual market structure works. Like, to us, the structure, the foundation behind the market structure was the whole reason why prices move, how everything works. And that's why we never cared. Like, we literally launched Thinkorswim with no news and no charts because we didn't care. Nobody ever used that stuff on the trading floor. When we launched Tasty, we launched it with no news and limited charts because we didn't care, because that's not how we want people to think. So, I mean, yeah, we've
well, for the people out there that do think like that, they can join me on my wild ride twice a day here on Tasty Live as we try to.
Well, we realized at some point that we had to concede, or we wouldn't. We had to concede certain things. Like, we had to give a little bit back because there was too many people like you and like others that I'm not going to come over unless you have like the very basic things that I need. So we're like, fine.
Some people like to go for it on fourth down, Tom.
I like to go for it on fourth down. But we always felt like we were playing a little bit different game. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. So before we wrap this up, there was one more piece of news that was interesting, and perhaps let me explain here legitimately to fulfill the show's spirit, if you will, of the title. OpenAI apparently received a $97.4 billion unsolicited bid from Elon Musk and a group of accredited investors who are interested in taking a controlling stake in the operation. Now, at first blush, you look at the news last night and go, that doesn't make any sense. Didn't they just get $40 billion from SoftBank to bring their valuation up to $240 billion? Why on earth would they do this? Because as OpenAI transitions from a nonprofit to a for-profit entity, Sam Altman has to theoretically buy the assets from the nonprofit itself. Submitting an unsolicited bid attaches a value to those assets, which now complicates OpenAI's ability and Sam Altman's ability to transform the company from nonprofit to for-profit. Whether or not this means that Grok 3 is going down the tubes or Elon Musk actually wants to acquire OpenAI is another story. But in terms of how this is actually a piece of like corporate chess, I would think of it more along the lines of trying to throw some, stones or a stick in the spoke of the bicycle tire rather than a legitimate bid itself. And maybe it's coming from the fact that we do have a Stargate $500 billion White House-led financing program here moving forward to build out AI infrastructure. In any event, I thought it was an interesting bit of clarification that was worth sharing with people. Musk is certainly being a savvy businessman here.
Either that or this is just you're 100% spot on. And that's because that's the first thing everybody said. Well, with a $250 million bid, why would, what's the point? And this is petty bullshit. And it. This is just like ridiculous. This is like Musk sitting around, getting high and saying, screw these guys. I'm just going to put $100 billion bid in just to make him pay more for his own company. Because he would rather chop his own fingers off than sell it to me. Never going to happen. And they know that. Like, he could have made it $200 billion, except he tried that with Twitter and it didn't work. So he doesn't want anybody to face him, because that's the biggest risk for him. Is the last time he got high, put a stupid bid out there, they basically sold him the company, and he doesn't want another Twitter to show up. So this time he put a bid in that's actually, that at least he knows they're not going to do it. But this is just this. I don't know what's gotten into that guy. I mean, it's just like almost like he can't get enough headlines. Meanwhile, it's not helping his Tesla stock, that's for sure, which is on its way back to where it was pre, it's not quite there yet, but he spent a lot of money.
It's pretty close, I don't know, to where it started December.
No, where it started. December. I was going to say where the election, the November election, which I think was
93% after the election, and it's off like 30% from its post-election high now.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Musk spent, 270 million on Trump, and then, it turned into about $150 billion winner for him with Tesla at 480, but Tesla at 340 on what looks like on its way back to 280. I'm not so sure he's playing this like the genius he thinks he is, because people clearly realize that he's got a lot of stuff going on, and one of them ain't Tesla.
Chris, let me help you here for a minute. But I thought news means nothing.